Hey everybody, I'm Justin. I'm so glad that you're here. I just want to remind all the parents, teachers, and coaches that your words are not neutral. Your actions are not neutral. And in the lives of our students and players, we're either going to build them up or break them down. And it's okay to challenge kids. It's okay to coach them hard. But here's your reminder, if you're ever going to coach somebody hard, that you better be prepared to always follow up and love them up even harder. When I was in the 5th grade, I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm 37 years old right now, and this moment forever is forged as a core memory. I'm in line, I have my tray full of food in my left hand, and I'm reaching for the silverware, a fork in particular, with my right hand. As I'm putting the fork on my tray, it begins to fall, and I start to bat it up and down 2, 3, 4 times, and finally, as the fork is falling and about to hit the ground, I make a smooth, swooping catch. And I grab it with one hand. It wasn't what I did, it was who saw it. It was Coach Franken, my elementary PE teacher. The only teacher in the entire building who was a male, and he was my hero. He was strong, charismatic, funny, smart. And when he looked at me with his mustache, with his t-shirt tucked into his jogging pants, and when he looked at me and pointed at me, and he said the 3 words I'll never forget, he said, "Nice catch, Pickens." Boy, it put me on cloud 9. He walks away. An everyday occurrence for him is something I remember for the rest of my life. See, what was going on in 5th grade was that my dad had just started relapsing on methamphetamines for the 2nd time. And in my household, with meth rage growing, it wasn't who could solve an argument with logic. It could who could yell the loudest, the longest, and say the most curse words. And when that didn't work out, a lot of times it would resort in some sort of physical altercation. We were the poor kids. We were the welfare kids. We were the white trash kids. We were the kids that were talked about by teachers, I'm sure, in the lounge. But all I know is that moment with Coach Franken, I was a somebody. I was a somebody who could catch. And that would start a ripple effect. And I would later go on to get a college football scholarship as a wide receiver. And I would later go on to become a teacher and a coach. And I would also be a high school wide receiver football coach. And then right now, as I talk to you, I'm also an elementary PE teacher. Our words have power. In my 15-year teaching career, I have built kids up and I've made them feel 100 feet tall. And I've also had moments where I forget to breathe. I get rattled and I will cut somebody down as low as somebody can go. Today, I just want to use the acronym behind me, CAP, to explain a story about how my little brother became a captain one day. We want to challenge kids, we want to acknowledge them, and we want to promote them. Challenge, acknowledge, promote. So a little bit about myself before I get in. I'm Justin. I've been an educator for 15 years. I've been a 3-sport teacher and a coach, and I'm also a motivational speaker for K through 12 students as well as teachers. Specifically to my story, you know my why. You know that I looked up to teachers and coaches my entire life, and coming from adverse childhood experiences that said I should be dead, incarcerated, imprisoned, or addicted, I broke the odds. But as a teacher of 13 years, I didn't feel unseen. I felt unseen, unheard, and sometimes I didn't feel as if my strengths were being utilized. And I left teaching to go pursue financial advising. That's right. I went from a gym full of laughing kids to a skyscraper in a suit and tie. And after about 2 years of the corporate industry, I realized that there's no better title that I will ever have than coach. So I came back to teaching, and I'm living out my life, encouraging kids in my classroom and encouraging parents, teachers, coaches, and students around the country. So your words have power. Your words give hope. And that is one thing our generation desperately needs is hope. I am a somebody. I can become a somebody, and I have the tools to always grow. So how do we do that? Well, let me tell you another story real quick, and this one's about my little brother named Tommy, and this was in the 10th grade. And in the 10th grade, Tommy was a wrestler, one of the toughest sports that you can play. And over winter break, they had winter practices, and Tommy didn't have a ride to practices over winter break. So Tommy takes it upon himself to jog to practice every single day. And this is out in the Ozark Mountains. There are no sidewalks. From 358 Pickens Lane to 100 Mustang Drive, it was 7.35 miles. Why didn't Tommy just ask for a ride? Well, we were about 25 minutes from any sort of neighbor who could have gave him a ride. And at a certain point, when you've grown up poor your whole life and you're on welfare and you're the kid who's always getting handouts, you just simply don't want to be a burden. Maybe a little prideful, but also Tommy had a lot of grit that said, if I can take it, I can make it. And if I can show up to practice, I will get there on my own. So the first day, Tommy runs the practice, 7.35 miles. He shows up to practice, but he shows up to practice just a little bit late. And his wrestling coach, Coach Scott, says, Tommy, you are late. He challenged him. He set high expectations. You know what? Because we should set high expectations for our kids. He said, Tommy, you're late. Practice started 10 minutes ago, son. See me after practice for extra conditioning. So Tommy says, yes, sir. Doesn't say a word. Shows up to practice. Late. Runs for extra conditioning afterwards. And then the next day, he does the same exact thing. He shows up to practice a little bit late after running the 7.35 miles. And this is the second day. Coach Scott is a little upset that expectations aren't being met. And he's like, Tommy, 2 days in a row, calls him out in front of the team. You need to get to practice on time, son. Do you not care enough about this? Tommy doesn't make an excuse and just says, yes, sir. I'll get here to practice on time tomorrow. Coach Scott says, see me after practice for extra conditioning. Third day, when Tommy's running to practice, remember, these are the Ozark Hills and the Ozark Mountains. There's the highway, then there's the ditch. And time after time, cars are passing Tommy by. No one is lending a helping hand, but he's doing it himself. 3 days in a row, Tommy shows up to practice late again. And at this point, Coach Scott loses his temper and in front of the whole team cuts Tommy down. Don't you know it's important to be at practice on time? Everybody else can make it. Why can't you? If you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, you're forgotten about. See me after practice for extra conditioning, Tommy. Well, at this point, Tommy was reaching a breaking point, and he says, yes, sir. And there's a tremble in his voice, and he asks to be excused to go use the bathroom. He slumps off to the bathroom, just defeated. His body language says it all. And my little brother just gets to the mirror, and with the weight of the world on his shoulder, he just looks at himself, and he starts crying. Just bawling. Big tears. Well, Coach Scott was smart enough to challenge Tommy in the first place. But number two, he started to acknowledge what was going on. And when he saw the body language of Tommy, who was typically a tough kid, when he saw him slumped over, he followed him to the bathroom as Tommy is crying big tears. Coach Scott walks in and puts his hand on his shoulder and he's like, what are you doing, Tommy? Tell me what's going on. And Tommy just says, I've been running to practice every single day. And Coach Scott said, you've been running from your house every day? Coach Scott knew exactly how far that was. He says, Tommy, put yourself together and come with me. Brings Tommy out back to the wrestling mats, calls the team over, has him sit on a knee. And he goes, gentlemen, this is Tommy Pickens. He's a sophomore. And he just became one of your new team captains. Because if this kid can run to practice 3 days in a row and not make any excuses, he's the type of leader that I want on this team. He was promoted to captain. My brother's 35 years old, and this story still resonates with him, that his hard work is going to pay off. His actions are going to be seen, he's going to be heard, and he's going to be valued. So as you go throughout your day, whether you're a parent, a teacher, or a coach, how can we challenge kids? Hold them to high standards. Because if you don't hold kids to a high standard, you are doing them a disservice. Number two, how can we acknowledge what's going on in a student's life? Not give them excuses, I said, but acknowledge what is going on in their life. Acknowledge trends, whether it be for good or for bad. How can we acknowledge who they are and the why behind their performance? Sometimes that takes just an extra amount of intentionality, not time. To be the extra mile educator does not always take time. Sometimes it takes extra intention. And then finally, when we see a behavior that we like, how do we promote it? How do we acknowledge it? In this situation, Tommy was promoted to captain. How do you promote positive character traits, positive work habits? How do you set high expectations? How do you acknowledge those expectations? And then how do you promote those who are displaying those expectations? So as you're at the summit this week and you're hearing a lot of amazing speakers, I just want to say that if you found any value in what I have to offer and what I'm speaking about and how I'm trying to give teachers and coaches and students hope for a brighter future, if you find any value in that, I'm Justin Pickens, and if you stuck along with me for this long, you can find me at www.justinpickens.com. You can email me at justin@justinpickens.com. I'd be happy to connect with you. My information will be in the show notes. And I just want to say, go out there and build people up. Coach them hard, but love them even harder. Have a great rest of your day. Go inspire the next generation. And never forget that you are a difference maker. And what you do today will continue to have ripple effects in your students' lives for the rest of eternity.